Hey guys, hey, listen, I had a light bulb moment. So, when it comes to business, I was like, okay, so a lot of coaches and, successful business people have podcasts and so on, presentations, webinars, and they talk about, hey, I went from, zero or a 9 to 5 job to making millions, multi-millions in, a year or two and so on and so forth. And I would encourage you to keep watching those. Those are so inspirational and totally valuable. But I had this moment where I was like, okay, so what about the people who are like, I have ambition to do some of these things, but maybe it sounds daunting to go from the job that you have that is helping you to pay your bills and to take care of some very important aspects of your life. Well, what is that bridge? How can I on ramp to get toward that? Right. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to share my thoughts on some of these aspects. I feel like I am part of the bridge community. I just made that up. You could say that I'm part of the bridge community because I'm not where I was. And important, compare yourself against where you started, not against other people. I feel like that's important, right? Because you can keep building momentum and moving forward and having a positive mindset as you do so. So I am still on my way, but I'm not where I started, right? I'm not at zero. And so I figure I'll share some of my thoughts. So today I had three thoughts I wanted to share, three areas of insight that I learned about business over the first year of opening a storefront. Not every business should go to a storefront. Not every business has to go to a storefront, actually, in this the current international marketplace. I mean, it's just too, it's global. There's so many opportunities, right? So not every business needs to go to a storefront. We did. Also, our business model, some could argue, I might argue it myself, that it's not necessarily scalable in its current form. There are things that we could scale. So what we started is a bakery. My wife is so talented that I felt obligated to try to monetize that. And we did. We monetized it. But I proved the principle while we still lived in our house. So that's one thing, you should consider is if you have a talent, and I know many people are already doing that, start where you're not including or adding overhead charges that could, you know, make you lose momentum or feel like the stuff is not working, right? So you can start to see, prove the principle in your own home or something like that where you don't have additional overhead. So that's what we did. And we found out that she was gaining a lot of traction, like I think in the first 18 months or so, which this is not necessarily a metric that's empirical and means a whole lot, but it's an indicator. In the first 18 months, she garnered, I think, 2,000 followers, and she had, and it's mostly custom cakes. Her business is to provide custom cakes that were um, designed with sculpture and ingredients and skill that made the cakes look like replicas of real life things to help families celebrate their loved ones. And by celebrating their loved ones in the way that they chose, it really created memories to last a lifetime. And it brought satisfaction to the recipients. That is what the business is about. And so lots of orders came in at a higher price point because of the skill involved and the taste. right? It's cake. It's got to taste better than it looks, and but it has to look amazing, right? So that's the thing. That's what we did. So we proved that principle in the home, and then we had the probably the ultimate test was through the COVID period. What we noticed is that for about a month, things kind of came to a screeching halt or slowed down significantly, but it only lasted for about a month. And people came back, and people, what they were doing is they weren't canceling their events outright, they were just getting like smaller cakes, right? So when you decide on the thing that you want to jumpstart, think of something that's recession proof. Goes without saying, but I said it. Okay, so here are the 3 points that I want to talk about. So, funding. Funding is probably going to be top of mind for you as well if you want to start a thing. So, a negative and a positive. Negative, which I would urge you to research, and it may not be the same for you depending on the industry you were trying to break into. For us, our experience, our notice, our observation here was that even if you're a minority business owner, like I am, and my wife, by virtue of being female, I didn't come up with these labels, the SBA did. So, minority business owners, over 800 credit score at the time, six-figure income, six-figure salary. At the time, we were at home grossing over 20,000 just making cakes out of our basement. What else? Yeah, even in the cottage industry, those were some of the factors we had when we approached the SBA. And we went to 4 different banks who were authorized to do SBA loans, and they all turned us down. And they never could give a real clear reason for doing it. One of them came close to indicate or imply that, well, the industry that we were in, not the industry, our revenue wasn't high enough. So if our revenue in the cottage side of things is not high enough, why would we be coming to you? I mean, if it was high already, why would we come to you to get a loan to go into a storefront? I mean, I don't know. But anyway, those were our observations. So I would caution you that, just so you know, not because SBA says whatever they say, it doesn't mean that that's going to happen automatically. Maybe I'm sure it's happened for others. Didn't happen for us. A positive, though, is after all of those no's, we secured financing from a local bank. I have this tendency to just not quit trying. I'll just get up and go and say, hey, here's my business plan. And I did that. I put on a suit and I went into the bank, and in Southwest Missouri, where there's, I don't know, there's like a 1%. Well, now it's probably more like a 3% population that looks like me. But I went in and I said, hey, here's my business plan. Loan officer's like, man, that's one of the best business plans I've seen. And we got a loan to open that storefront. So we built from scratch, and we did a thing. I'll talk about that here in my third point when it comes to expansion. So I talk about funding, and hopefully you're gleaning some things from that, some tips that can help you out if you're just starting from zero. Marketing. So reconciling your analysis, like your SWOT, which is the most basic analysis. You could do your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the marketplace relating to your business. So reconciling that and the demographic research that you've done with the real world reveals a lot of information that your analysis couldn't predict, right? That's what we observe. So bear that in mind. The military says, no plan survives first contact. So this could probably relate where our analysis. So what do I mean by that? We had a few factors that we considered going into opening the storefront. One of them was that Darla, my wife and co-owner, is a native of that area. Granted, the area wasn't right off the highway, but it was sandwiched between two main thoroughfares, and it was on the city square, so it's inside the city limits, pretty much in the business district. So, a pretty decent spot for a commercial property. So we had that going in that as a local, because that area is really, they pay attention to stuff like that. Um, let's see what else. Yeah, so those are the things that we're going in with. And then I already talked about how many followers she had and how much business she had already generated a lot of momentum, created a lot of momentum. So those were good things going into it. The other point with marketing is uh, people will come at you with their hands open. If you open a small business, a storefront anywhere, people are going to show up out of the woodwork coming in with their, hey, can you donate to this, and hey, can you give sponsor this and sponsor that. Okay, I get it, right? um, you're a local business and they're like, hey, the thing is though, you're not going to be in a position when you just open to be sponsoring a lot of things. It's tempting to want to do that though, from a marketing or advertising, I would say advertising, I'm making a stipulation standpoint. You may want to do that, and it may benefit you that it's you're making people aware of your offerings, right? So there is that. Um, if that's gonna eat into um, your operational cash flow when you're just opening, though, maybe that's something to consider. Those are just thoughts that I would leave with you to consider how you're gonna do that. But that's one thing that's going to happen. Um, Not meeting those expectations could slow your momentum because people are gonna go away. People typically don't care. Like, you don't care what I have to say about me, right? You care about what value am I providing to you right now with what I'm telling you. Um, so people don't really care about your overhead or your operational costs, right? They care about, are you doing the thing for me that I would like you to do? So that's something to consider. So hopefully, telling you to think about that is adding value to your plan. Okay, what's the other point I made here? The positive thing though is that certain outlets will recognize. I don't know if I say your value. That almost sounds kind of dramatic, right? But they'll recognize your value, or they'll recognize something in you that they might want to reach out to you to do a story on you, or interview you. There's something interesting about the metrics they see about you. It could be the design of your storefront. It could be what other people are saying about you on social media, right? It's a branding uh, operation, and you want to care about that, right? But they will find you. Like, we had a morning TV show personality find us and do a story and interviewed Darla, right? So that's one good thing that happened. And then we also had the Business Journal, from the one of the larger cities around where we live, came out and did an interview, took pictures and so on. So those things do cause a little bit of momentum, gives you some credibility. The novelty will wear off eventually, right? So you have to constantly think of ways to still be top of mind of people, but like in our case, we refuse to not be authentic about who we are and what our business is about. So that's something to consider as well. Because if you approach your business to do too much too fast in a gimmicky fashion, you won't last. And we've seen businesses that did that. I think of one business that lasted about 90 days, and they similar business, and had cases full of stuff, like lots of stuff, lasted 90 days in a rented storefront. right? So I don't know the ins and outs of why that business decided to close their doors. But what I do know is that we decided to take the bad, whatever people, okay, so one person came in and people would say, oh, you don't have a lot of stuff in the case. We recognize early on that one, we do a lot of stuff fresh. So Darla would actually peel the apples and reduce them, or put the blueberries in the pan and reduce them down to make turnovers and to make scones, or, well, scones don't have reduced things. Things that needed, I'm not a chef, I'm not a baker. um, but what I'm saying is that we recognize that we use like fresh stuff, and the effort was significant in some of those areas. So for us, we're not going to waste the things, right? We're going to look at the trends. That's another point to think of in a retail type of establishment. Predicting trend, you can have Square, you can have whatever POS you have. They'll show you every day your trends, what products are selling the most. They'll show you a time frame in which they're sold. They'll show you all the things, and I'm telling you, we could not establish a trend. People come in when they come in, they'll not come in when they don't come in. Anyway, we did not want to waste the product, or waste money. And so we would do just so much based on what we were seeing as a trend. That's the closest we got. And so if somebody came into our shop at 2 o'clock in the day, when we're closing in an hour, we're not gonna have a whole lot of stuff in a case. We had one person come in for the very first time and went and did a bad review, gave us like a 1-star review because we didn't have enough things in a case. So those things are gonna happen. You gotta have a thick skin and figure out, does it actually impact your business, and how much does it impact, how significant it is. Those are those things to think about. Okay, so expansion, right? So going back to that, pros and cons. Pros and cons for renting. I talked about the business that rented a storefront in a fairly high traffic area. Obviously, what you're gonna have is like high rental rates, but you can walk away from the lease. That's a pro, right? If you go in there and you're, well, not a pro, that's a con. That's a pro. It's a pro that you could just walk away from the lease, and I'll explain some more why I vacillated a little bit there. Because you don't, I mean, you're like, hey, I'm done, and you walk away. So that's a pro. A con is that you may be on the hook for a multi-year lease, and most businesses, especially in this economy, it's kind of dual, two-headed, where people aren't renting a lot of stuff because a lot of people may not be starting businesses. So it's like, hey, I got to rent this at a lower price. Or they may say, I'll rent it at a lower price, but I'm going to lock you in for 5 years. And if you break the lease, well, then you're going to owe X amount of dollars. To me, that's a con. I don't want to deal with still paying for something if I walk away. Um, so a con also is that you're stuck. This is for buying. A con for buying your property is that you're stuck with it until you could sell it. I mean, that goes without saying, right? If you bought it, you own it, you got it until you sell it. Um, so so you have to keep it to pay the mortgage, and you have to keep that business going to help pay for itself, or pivot to something else. But a pro, and this is the direction we went, is that, like, I wanted to do a real estate investment deal when I jumped into this. And a more experienced business person making multi millions may have different views about this. But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail. do the thing, fail, and you learn a lot, right? So I went for a real estate deal because I felt like when it was time for us to pivot or to walk away, we would keep paying, the business would keep paying for itself until we could sell it, and then we can walk away, and we'd have some equity in that property, right? So we bought several acres, like 4 acres in the middle of a small town in the city square I mean, that is pretty significant, right? To have a bakery on a piece of land like that in that area. That was my going in position. So at some point when we sell that, well, then we'll reap the benefits of that. And then we'll take that and invest it into the other business that we also started, right? So hopefully there's something that you can take away from this. I just wanted to summarize the 3 points that you're probably going to think about in the initial stages of starting your business. Is funding, and then marketing considerations, and then expansion. Like where do you want to end up? Where do you want to go? Purely online, if you do a storefront, does a lease work better for you, or just purchasing the thing? When you lease a place, you also have to most likely finish it out, so that's more capital infusion just going into this leased space. And then when it's time to walk away, maybe you could sell the business, right? So the business operation and so on. So somebody could take it over, and you get more return for selling the whole business system rather than closing the business and then just walking away. And then you paid all that money. Hopefully you made enough of a profit that it was worth it. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Until next time, when I talk about vision casting, and encouraging you to take the first step, I'll see you later.